What do you think is the most valuable commodity that cartels move across our borders?
20 years ago, cocaine. Today, I'd have to say it'd be people. It's a resource they don't have to cultivate or process. And if they don't make it across, they can pay to cross again at 3 times the price of a kilo.
You can name your own price, you know. This is the border. The Matamoros cartel pay people well, working.
Now to our NBC News investigation. Disturbing allegations that workers at some U.S. military bases are the victims of human trafficking. Our report, produced in collaboration with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the Washington Post, and Arab Reporters for Investigative Journalism.
News begins with breaking news.
First at 5, a Marine who was found dead from a gunshot wound to his head at Camp Pendleton has been identified.
The information just coming into our newsroom. Let's go straight to 10 News reporter Rachel Bianco with the breaking details. Rachel?
Yeah, and Kimberly, the news is all over Twitter. Marine found dead at Camp Pendleton, identified. His name is Lance Corporal Dominic Schraft of Missouri. He was found yesterday on a training range with a gunshot wound to the head, just 19 years old. The circumstances of the shooting still under investigation.
We've learned a Marine found dead in his barracks at Camp Pendleton will be laid to rest this weekend. Private First Class Christopher Hutchings was found on February 5th. His death is now being investigated by Armed Forces Medical Examiner alongside the Naval Criminal Investigative Services, also known as NCIS.
Camp Lejeune colonel accused of sexually assaulting minors appeared before a base judge today. Colonel Daniel Wilson is facing numerous charges of assault and conduct unbecoming of an officer. WNCT's Elizabeth Tu was in the courtroom and has more on the proceedings.
Colonel Daniel Wilson slowly walked from the brig to the courtroom with his lawyer, Philip Stackhouse, where he pled not guilty in front of a base judge. Wilson asked the judge on Friday for a trial before members rather than by a judge. He is charged with sexual assault, assault consummated by battery, and absence without leave, stemming from a December incident. He was already facing charges of 3 counts of sexually abusing a child and 9 counts of conduct unbecoming of an officer, stemming from an incident in June. Wilson was ultimately barred from base after sending threatening Facebook messages to an undisclosed recipient, but those messages aren't related to the sexual assault charges.
Well, guys, Colonel Daniel Wilson was convicted of several charges related to 3 separate incidents, but the most serious charge, that of sexual assault, was overturned on appeal due to insufficient evidence. A military court found Wilson guilty of inappropriately touching a 6-year-old girl at his home while stationed at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina.
A U.S. Marine has been detained after a missing teenage girl was found in the barracks of a California military base. The girl is just 14 years old. She was found about 2 weeks after her grandmother reported her missing.
Now, the girl who was reported missing vanished on June 13th, and she was found on the 28th inside the highly secured base in a building that houses Marines. Those 2 facts have raised a lot of questions. How does a missing 14-year-old girl get onto a secure military base, and how long was she in those dorm-style barracks, which are inspected daily?
The aunt of the 14-year-old girl found in the barracks at Camp Pendleton after being reported missing is sharing what she says happened to her niece.
She was found in the barracks by military police. She had been sold to a soldier for sex. The military is trying to cover it up. They're trying to cover it up and place majority of the blame on her.
According to the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, the girl was reported missing by her grandmother on June 13th after running away on the 9th.
Explosive story out of Camp Pendleton, where a missing 14-year-old girl has finally been found and a Marine has been taken into custody in connection with her disappearance.
That girl's family now alleging she was trafficked and sold to a Marine for sex. Our Leanne Suter joining us live in studio with the latest details. Leanne?
Michelle and Jory, shocking details and allegations coming from the victim's family, who says that teen was sold for sex. Camp Pendleton authorities now investigating.
Authorities confirming this picture posted on social media showing the moment the Marine was arrested as authorities investigate a possible human trafficking case at Camp Pendleton after a missing 14-year-old girl was found on base.
Just trying to give an update. My family and I are doing okay. Would just like to start off by thanking everyone for boosting this video. I appreciate everyone trying to bring awareness to this incident.
The teen's aunt taking to social media to talk about the case and concerns about possible retaliation from the military. The woman says her niece has learning disabilities and was allegedly sold for sex.
A Camp Pendleton Marine accused of having sex with a 14-year-old girl in his barracks was identified for the first time today during a preliminary hearing on base.
Avery Rosario walked into military court in handcuffs.
I refuse to allow this matter to be swept under the rug. She was raped by a Marine at Camp Pendleton.
The girl claimed she had been sold by a pimp and sexually trafficked.
On June 28th, the teen was located inside the barracks at Camp Pendleton. Since the base is federal property, Naval Criminal Investigative Services is handling the investigation with the assistance of the Sheriff's Department and San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force.
I will not rest until the whole world knows, and those responsible are held accountable and justice is served.
Now to that stunning mass arrest of 16 U.S. Marines at Camp Pendleton. They're accused of drug-related crimes and human smuggling. Our Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Redis tracking the fallout in Washington. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, George. This was a mass arrest that no one in that Marine Corps battalion at Camp Pendleton will forget. They were all lined up in formation when authorities swept in and one by one pulled out those 16 Marines. With everyone watching, they were handcuffed and then taken into custody. The Marine Corps says this was for their alleged involvement in various illegal activities, including human smuggling. Earlier this month, 2 Marines were charged with transporting migrants for financial gain. The charging documents say a contact in Mexico told the Marines where to pick up the migrants once they crossed the border into the U.S. This is an embarrassment for the Marine Corps, especially since other Marines from Camp Pendleton have been tasked by the Pentagon to help secure the border. George?
Yeah, it certainly is an embarrassment. Okay, Martha, thanks very much.
In Southern California, more than a dozen U.S. Marines are under arrest tonight on charges that include human smuggling. They're based at Camp Pendleton. That's about an hour's drive from the Mexican border. And David Martin has details of the arrest that was done as a public display for the entire unit to see.
First, there were 2 Marines accused of human smuggling. Now there are 16 more. All members of the same battalion arrested at Camp Pendleton, California today during morning formation.
Video from July 2019 shows the moment where over a dozen Marines from 1st Marine Division were arrested during a battalion formation at Camp Pendleton over suspicion of human smuggling and drug offenses.
None of them were among the 6,600 active duty and National Guard troops assigned to the southwest border. 8 more Marines were questioned in an unrelated drug case. The first 2 Marines were arrested earlier this month when Border Patrol agents caught them in the act of picking up 3 undocumented immigrants from Mexico. According to court documents, the 3 immigrants told investigators they were paying $8,000 to be smuggled to Los Angeles or New Jersey. One of the Marines said he was expecting to be paid $1,000 for his role. The other said he had made similar pickups before. That case prompted Border Patrol agents to expand their investigation, resulting in today's mass arrest. Officials say more arrests are expected. In a separate case, 22 Navy SEALs, an entire platoon, have been sent home from Iraq. Defense officials tell CBS News they took part in a drunken July 4th party, which not only violated regulations against consuming alcohol in Iraq, but resulted in allegations of sexual assault. A tweet from the Special Operations Command said their commander lost confidence in the team's ability to accomplish the mission. Defense officials say the SEALs were sent home because all of them invoked a code of silence and refused to talk about what had happened at the party. Nora?
All right, David Martin at the Pentagon, thank you.
New developments in a case involving 24 Camp Pendleton Marines that have been less than honorably discharged over accusations of human smuggling and drug trafficking.
And this coming after arrests were made on base in front of other Marines back in July. Marilyn Moore joining us now with the latest developments.
That's right, and really it was very dramatic how these arrests played out initially. It all happened right in front of other Marines during a battalion formation, and now this investigation, it has led to 24 discharges.
Now 24 Marines are facing less than honorable discharges from the military. A spokesperson for 1st Marine Division told Fox 5 Saturday the 9 most appalling cases were sent to courts-martial where 8 pleaded guilty. One Marine with a bad conduct discharge is still serving 18 months in the brig. Over the last week, authorities arrested the man they believe was the ringleader of the operation, Francisco Rojas. Prosecutors say he was the one who recruited Marines from Camp Pendleton and paid them to transport illegal immigrants through San Diego after they crossed the U.S.-Mexico border.
You could turn your attention to the screen real fast. I want to show a quick photo that I took. It was 11:46 at night. I myself took this photo. That little girl that you see was acting terrified, not of the agents, not of myself, but of the man holding her. The very next day at the Donna processing facility, we threatened, and I was there to witness this man with a DNA test. He confessed that he actually was not her father, that he had rented her. This is a process called recycling. Now, I know we're here to talk about what happens to these kids after this point, but this little girl was then turned over to HHS custody, your custody, and you've talked at length today about the vetting process, right? And so you now know that this little girl, not through a DNA test, she's not related to that man. She now is in your custody. You have your own case managers who are supposed to vet these processes. And we, of course, know this from the Florida grand jury. These case managers have very little training or no training in interviewing these individuals, particularly children and young children who have been traumatized. You can imagine that this man who you just saw on the screen, who, by the way, was a convicted sex offender with this child, you can imagine the trauma that that child had sustained. Your own case managers are not trained in examining, evaluating, or recognizing documents as authentic or fake. She came with no documents. They have no official training when it comes to trauma-informed interviewing skills. No official training when it comes to investigating the safety or legitimacy of addresses to which a UAC may be sent. Now, I don't know what happened to that little girl, but what I do know is that the sponsors that you claim to thoroughly vet, which I would love to get your definition of thorough, because you haven't been able to articulate that here today. It also would include the fact that these kids show up with numbers pinned to their clothes or Sharpied on their bodies to call. Agents have reported in official testimony that these kids have the numbers, the same phone number Sharpied on their arms time and time again. Now, we've heard, of course, of situations where the same sponsor is being called and magically 20, 30, 40 kids end up with that sponsor. And again, I go back to your statement of we thoroughly vet. You've really emphasized that. Do you vet every member of the household? And does it include an FBI check? Does it include an Interpol check? I would hope that it would, considering that we've had 151 different nationalities cross the southwest border, but I'm guessing that it doesn't, because only 9% of the UACs are subjected to a DNA test with their sponsor, less than 23% to a background check. And again, I should point out for the record the fact that you release these folks, these kids, to sponsors that are in the country illegally.
Why weren't you stopped at the border?
Some special.
The night of February 11th, the Egyptian dictatorship of Hosni Mubarak was falling. More than 100,000 people filled Cairo's Tahrir Square in wild celebration. Among those in the crowd was our 60 Minutes colleague, correspondent Lara Logan. Lara, a native of South Africa, is an experienced war reporter, but Tahrir Square became her most hazardous assignment. The night of the 11th, a mob turned on Lara and her 60 Minutes team and singled her out in a violent sexual assault. She's speaking out, she tells us, to add her voice to those who confront sexual violence, to break what she calls the code of silence.
First and foremost, what I want to tell you is that it's all about the children, right? And I said that because I am currently working on a 4-part series. When I relaunch my show, I'm working on a 4-part series on child trafficking. And when you start to go into this very dark world of trafficking, you learn about a lot of things that many people don't want to accept, and many people don't want to face, and many people don't want to believe is true. But my job as a journalist is to follow the facts regardless of where they take me. I couldn't care less about politics. I am not defined by Democrat or Republican or left or right. They try all the time to put me in a little box, and it never sticks because it's completely and utterly untrue. And what I care about is understanding, number one, what has happened to all of these missing children? How come hundreds of thousands of children go missing every year? How come they go missing in child protective services and in their custody? How come so many of the kids, 70, 80% of the kids that end up in sex trafficking have been through the foster care system? This is not okay. And when you start to go and investigate this and you learn the details of it, they say the devil is in the details. And that's true both literally and figuratively. I, for example, right now am working on investigating a case where a guy has a 6-year-old child in a cage, raping this child every day, a little boy. Okay, and these are people, some of them are in law enforcement. Some of them are working with people in child protective services. Some of them are protecting very elite people in our societies who are and have been involved in these things for a very long time. And this should not come as a surprise to anyone, because Jeffrey Epstein is no secret, right? And people know that Jeffrey Epstein, take a look at the logs on his airplane, and you see all the elite people in our society who have gone to Epstein Island, and somehow we still don't know what any of them have done. We've had Ghislaine Maxwell on trial. She's been convicted, and it's extraordinary because it's a completely victimless crime. We don't know who the victims are, and we don't know who the perpetrators are, because Ghislaine Maxwell was a middleman, right? She was willing for the people to be raped and to be sexually exploited and abused. And yet we don't know. We don't know anything about it. How is that possible? And when it comes to what I was talking about has a number of different aspects, right? Number one, you can read across the media, everyone from NBC to Politico to USA Today to everyone you can think of in mainstream media. They're fine doing articles about how the blood of young people is the secret to anti-aging, right? And you know that old saying, I think that you will appreciate this. My mother was a person who really handed down for me the wisdom of generations, right? And much of that comes in the kind of sayings and the cliches and the things that we learn. And why do they endure over time? Because they're true. And isn't there a saying that says only the good die young? Why is it that only the good die young? Is it because they're not interested in using the blood of young children? That if that's the cost of reversing the effects of aging, they're not prepared to pay it? But the evil people are. And what we don't do as journalists is we allow people to make these kind of statements and to write these articles, and they put in all the science and the data, and they say, isn't this amazing, right? It's the blood of young people. But we don't ask, how do you get the blood of young people? And how much blood of young people do you actually need? How much does one person need in order to stay young? And as you get older, do you need more and more of young people's blood? And by the way, does it matter if the children are younger and younger and younger? And what has to be in their blood? And you can talk to any doctor and they will tell you about the science of adrenaline, right? And how when adrenaline is released into the blood, it has effects. I know because when I was in Iraq as a war correspondent and our hotel was shelled, I watched the building fall down in pieces around me, and I knew that the office had been hit, was the Reuters office, and I knew that I knew most of the people in there. And I literally felt, when I realized that my friends could be dead, I felt the adrenaline leave my body. And I have never felt anything like it. And when I was in Tahrir Square, being gang raped and sodomized and beaten almost to death in Egypt, and I lost control of my security guy, they ripped him off me, I will never forget the feeling of the adrenaline leaving my body. I will never forget it, because it was the most defeating moment that I have ever experienced. And so we know, and doctors know, that adrenaline in the blood creates certain chemical releases that empower human beings. And when you look back in history and you go back in time, what do you find? In every society in the world, in the secret societies, in the noble societies. They talk about blood sacrifice and ritualized killings and so on and so on. But we don't want to talk about this today. We'll put it in our movies. We'll put it in TV shows. Netflix right now has a series called The Watcher.
And he went down to the living room, and there were all these old people standing in a circle in long red robes. And they're chanting. In the middle of the circle, there was this little baby. He'd slit its throat. They were drinking its blood.
Sorry, why are they doing this again? To look younger?
I looked it up. There are these cults, right? And there is something in the blood called adrenochromes that's excreted from the body by fear, and they fucking feed off of it. I've heard of cases like that shown with psych patients, with schizophrenics, think that drinking blood will make them live forever, or members of a demonic cult who have bizarre rituals.
Forget it. I just thought I'd ask.
Might be good to talk to someone. Both of you, I could arrange a consult right here in Des Moines.
They think that someone's been stealing plasma, so she put in this new protocol.
In The Watcher, the guy is talking about exactly this. His son witnessing a ritual sacrifice where children are being sacrificed. You know how crazy this is? 1,000 years ago, because I'm 51 now, when I was 17 years old, actually I was a little bit older because I'd been a journalist for a few years, I was probably about 20, 21 years old. I was working for Reuters, an international news agency, and I did a series on Satanism. And I can tell you, I looked at photographs of dead babies who had been skinned and used in ritual sacrifices in satanic cells in South Africa. I have listened to the interviews and the testimony of survivors of Satanism and to people who have received them. There's testimony from medical doctors. There's testimony from therapists who have tried to stitch these survivors back together. There's a 60 Minutes piece from years ago in Australia, from decades ago, where a survivor actually describes witnessing people being killed in these blood sacrifices.
It involves a secret network of the highest office holders in the land, past and current members of parliament, cabinet ministers, judges, diplomats, even one of the country's top spies. These men are accused of some of the most sadistic child sexual abuse imaginable on hundreds of victims, some as young as 8. More confronting still are claims that children were killed in order to protect this network of predators, including one boy whose father worked at the Australian High Commission in London. For over 40 years, the evil child predators acted with complete impunity, hiding behind the facade of respectability. But no longer.
Maar ook die kringen verkeerde ik dus in, omdat als gast, zeg maar. Omdat ik vond het allemaal wel leuk. Al die blote vrouwen en al die dingetjes die daar speelden. Het was het vrije leven. Maar er kwam een moment, toen werd ik dus uitgenodigd, daarom vertel ik dit ook, om mee te gaan doen aan offers in het buitenland. Dat was het breekpunt. Kinderen.
Oké. Dat werd je gevraagd?
Ja, ik kon het niet. My turning point was that I was so good in everything I did with my team that I was, in their opinion, ready for the last stage, to be invited and sacrifice of children. That hits me. I couldn't handle it. It was hitting me like hell. I didn't go there, and I started to malfunction, and my whole career falls apart.
In 27 years of reporting, it has to be one of the most painful stories
I've ever had to tell.
How many men or how many people would have sex with you?
What, at one time?
Yes.
About everyone who was there, which must have been about 20. You know, from 10 to 20 people. If it was a big ceremony, it used to be 30.
What would your grandma be doing when these men were forcing themselves on you?
Usually laughing. Or smiling. Or having sex with another man. Or other men.
A chronicle of debauchery and depravity, so horrific it's hard to believe.
You can go from Africa to Europe and beyond, and you will find a history and a culture of people drinking blood and of people making blood sacrifices. Look no further than pagan culture, when this wasn't even a secret. So why do we act today, if there's a long history of this, why do we act today like this is impossible for this to be true? And anyone who's talking about it must be nuts. But it's okay for Hunter S. Thompson to make a movie about it, to write a book about it, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and to talk about it in the film, and people say, oh, well, you know, that's just fiction. How do you know it's just fiction? Who proved that it's just fiction? How do we know? My job as a journalist is to ask the questions that people don't want to answer. My job as an investigative journalist is to make sure that I get the evidence to back it up, because I don't go out there with a preconceived idea. I follow the facts to where they take me. And when I speak to a guy who tells me when he was in the unit, which is Delta, that he was on underground operations and how they found children in cages, and I'm getting eyewitness testimony. He's not ready to talk about it publicly, but he's telling me in great detail what he found. And I'm working through the process with him, hoping that I can get more of these people to talk about it. We have a major problem here. We have hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied minors crossing the border into the United States, and they're not going to their parents. Where are they going?
How dark it is. They abducted the mama and these 4 kids. They took these kids to a house. They let everybody on the border know, if anybody wants in on this is how much it costs. This is what's going on. Contact this person. We'll come across the border and get you. They killed the infant in front of their brothers and sisters and in front of the mama. Then they tortured and murdered the mama in front of the kids. And in that terrorized, horrible state, with their dead mutilated brother and their dead mutilated mother, then these people paid big money to molest them in that state of trauma. That's how bad it is. And that is fueled, it is funded by porno. If you are a part of pornography, I'm telling you, you are a part of child trafficking.
7 men arrested in Sheboygan County this week in a human trafficking sting. This comes as local advocates push for more awareness surrounding major events.
Human trafficking happens every day in southeastern Wisconsin and across the country. But advocates say when there's a major event, there's an increase in demand. Emmy Myers made it her mission to help other men and women like her.
I was trafficked throughout the U.S. Obviously, major events were important.
She founded Lacey's Hope Project, which helps people trapped in sex trafficking. She knows firsthand how human traffickers operate.
Often these traffickers will travel from city to city to specifically follow large events. If you have more people gathering in an area, there's ultimately more demand.
Sex trafficking is a $150 billion a year global industry. Officials say these stings can sometimes unveil the darkest sides of humanity. Just because you may not see it happening, it still exists.
It is so crucial for people to realize this is not just an inner city problem. This is happening in our suburbs, and we need to become educated.
They also get into immigrants and human trafficking, explaining that they put migrants before veterans and the homeless, which is absolutely true, and terrible.
Yeah, the benefits are great. The side effects are crime. And that's what you have to be careful of.
Countries such as Venezuela are known to be emptying out their prisons and their mental institutions, and they're sending them to America. They're happy to let our open border be the solution to their problems and their responsibilities.
Especially when you got organized crime that's coming in to sell fentanyl. You got a lot of that. That's a wild one, because that's propped up by laws. That's propped up by our drug laws.
Did you know that Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution requires the government to defend and protect its borders? If our government does not uphold this, the Constitution authorizes its free citizens to defend and protect themselves and their state in place of a treasonous government. Even more interesting is that under Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution, it declares that the government will give comfort and aid to a hostile foreign invasion when the borders are not protected. And that, my friends, is labeled treason.
And that puts you in a real complicated situation. Like, do you make drugs legal? Everything legal. The problem is you're going to get a bunch of people that get addicted to drugs that probably wouldn't without that. And then you have to say, is that just part of the process? We have to learn to deal with this new thing that's everywhere and readily available. And how many people are going to try it just because it's legal? Probably quite a few. But at least how many people are not going to die from fentanyl poisoning because they're going to get pure stuff?
Troubles me about the debate now with the southern border is it is one half of the immigration equation. Yes, we need order at the border. Yes, we need to have changes in the laws that reflect the reality of the overwhelming numbers from all over the world who are coming to our shores and our border. You're an undocumented person in this country, and you can pass the physical and the required test, background test, the like. You can serve in our military, and if you do it honorably, we will make you citizens of the United States.
This video coming out of Arizona will shock you. We are going to be invaded from the inside. America, wake up, patriots. Stand strong to protect your country and your family. Watch this.
It's closed down for American citizens going into Mexico, and it's closed down for Mexican citizens coming into America. This is only being used for CBP-1, illegal entry into America. Now, that's salt in the wound. The real threat was what I saw yesterday, and I want to play some of this footage. I went back to Lukeville, Arizona, and what I saw should shock every single American. As soon as I got there, there was a tent of 150 fighting-age men, mostly from West Africa, Muslim countries in Africa, the Middle East, and India. And what they told me is that they actually, the new place that they're getting all of these people from, right here, you can see it right there on the screen. Those tents, that was yesterday, and this is happening every single day. 150 of them. They said they had over 500 yesterday alone in that one location. 500. And what scared me, and I went up, the Border Patrol, you could tell, was so frustrated. They wanted me to get in there and film it and show you close up. As soon as I did that, at the end of this video, I had a guy come out from National Park, said I couldn't be that close. I couldn't film this. I had to go across the street. And our own national park, our national monument down there. This is what's coming into America. But the scariest part, Border Patrol came up to me and he said, you need to know and you need to report this. We're getting huge numbers from Syria right now. And if we can show the picture, they sent me a picture of the guys from Syria. If we can show that picture of...
So who gets an AK-47 tattooed on their forearms? Somebody who likes firearms. And that's someone illegal coming here. These are cell groups, sleeper cell groups that are going to wake up and attack Americans. I'm telling you. Bro, I'm telling you.
This guy just came across our southern border. But this is just one.
Hang on. Just hang on. Yeah, just hang on. Okay, Cash.
And who's bringing these people here? Who's paying for it?
Hezbollah's coming across. You got Benson reporting. The Chinese Communist Party, I've heard from intelligence sources, not totally confirmed, 100,000 fighting-age men over the last year and a half, 2 years.
100,000 fighting-age men can be here in sleeper cells waiting for someone to say, let's go. So you better be prepared, stop playing around, get your heart right with Jesus, and get ready to protect your country and your family.
If I was a governor here, I would be afraid, because all of these people in China, military age, India, military age, even myself, I'm a military age. And there's a question is coming up in here, one scary question. If an incident between US and China occur in Taiwan, what these people do? Are they come side of US or they take China's side? Don't know, and no one's know.
What was the route you took from Iran?
Come to Turkey, and Turkey to Mexico, Mexico to United
So what would prevent a terrorist from doing the same thing?
Nothing. Exactly nothing.
You picked up a whole bunch of those IDs, guys from China, Russia, other places. It is shocking to me, and I talked to a lot of intelligence people, that the U.S. Intelligence Committee isn't down there scooping up these IDs and trying to figure out who dumped their IDs coming into the country. Because if you're dumping your ID, you probably have nefarious purposes coming into this country.
Imagine traveling to a foreign country and you lose your passport. That is the most important thing. You would do everything in your power. That would be the only thing on your mind, figuring out how to get it back. And you think about this, we have tens of thousands of people dumping their IDs before they come into our country, or even sometimes after. I find about half of them on the Mexico side, half of them on the US side, and there's a reason for it.
Smuggling terrorists seems pretty short-sighted to me. Border's gonna tighten like a vice now.
What happened to the price of cocaine after 9/11, Ken?
Information is so hard to find, so here's what I did find. In May of 2016, the USA approved a set of principles that give the green light for UN peacekeeping troops and police to use force to protect citizens in armed conflict, but the agreement doesn't specify where, so it could just be all over American soil. It has long been discussed that the people of America would win a war against the police and the military, and it's been long considered that the UN should embed themselves within our borders for when the day of conflict comes, to reinforce the police and the military. They literally lay it out. They literally lay it out.
We decided to follow the trail ourselves. A United Nations weaponized migration agenda, masquerading as an organic humanitarian crisis. This agenda directly benefits cartels and human smugglers, exposes the United States to incredible geopolitical threats, and could potentially usher in permanent one-party rule. Dozens of government and non-government organizations offer aid and instructions on how to navigate the mass migration trail. This map, provided by the United Nations, shows all of the migration-related organizations in Tolkien. Aliens receive aid in the form of legal assistance, food packages, healthcare, maps, and more.
Amigos, what country?
No.
What country?
No.
Why? What country?
No.
You from Syria?
No.
Syria. Hey, why is it a big secret? What's the problem?
No.
Why not?
No.
Whoa, what's the problem?
And now the United States government is calling the illegal immigrants, which is what they are, wants to call them non-citizens.
Well, first of all, let me say that we don't use the term illegal immigrants. I actually issued a policy in the Department of Homeland Security. We use the term non-citizen to respect the dignity of every individual as a preliminary matter.
Also, we don't call burglars or home invaders burglars or home invaders, okay? Show some respect. We call them unexpected house guests. Sure, they might want to harm us or steal our belongings, but we're going to make sure that their dignity is intact. Governor Pritzker recently signed more than 130 bills, and among the new laws, one allowing non-citizens to become police officers in Illinois.
Now that some undocumented immigrants can become healthcare workers and military members. However, it's been highly criticized by Republicans and the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police. It allows people who do not have legal status to become the officers of our laws. Now, the new law takes effect January 1st.
So how long do you think it'll be before they start rolling out the uniforms? Keeping in mind that in the state of Illinois, if you have a worker's permit, you can apply to be a police officer starting in January of 2024. You can be law enforcement if you're an illegal immigrant in the state of Illinois. But do not worry. These are for peacekeeping relations only. They just want to make sure that civilians don't overrun the police and the military in order to maintain the peace that we are all experiencing in the great old country of the United States of America.
They're making these immigrants, illegal immigrants, police, and they're giving them guns. Just imagine if you're pulled over by somebody who wasn't supposed to be here, who wasn't here legally, who came here without any passport or any identification, could be a terrorist telling you to get out of your vehicle. They even mention organized crime coming across. You absolutely need to see Help Me, SaveTheKids.com. Watch those documentaries, it'll really bring it to light. And they're also bringing fentanyl across the border, no doubt working with the CIA.
Mi gente, he pensado invadir una casa en United States, ya que me enteré que existe una ley que dice que si una casa no está habitada, podemos expropiarla. Capichi, muchachos, aquí en United States también se aplica la de invasión de terreno. Y creo que ese será mi próximo negocio. Invadir casas abandonadas, ya que me he buscado unos códigos con mis amigos africanos y me dijeron que ya llevan como 7 casas expropiadas. Y como dice el dicho, papi, hay que buscar la vuelta. Y la vuelta ahorita mismo es invadir casas, ya que nos encontramos en situación de calle y es la única manera que tenemos para no vivir en la calle y no ser una carga pública. Capichi, la ley dice que las casas abandonadas, deterioradas y que esté en mal estado, podemos llegar y repararlas, vivir en ellas y si podemos venderlas, hasta pedir créditos con ellas. ¿Qué dicen ustedes?
It is a growing problem in the tri-state area. We're talking squatters living in homes that do not belong to them. They're not paying any bills. We've told you about a few of these cases, thanks to you, Dan, over the past 2 weeks, and it's all due to this legal loophole.
Yeah, a loophole that many people are working to close, including investigative reporter Dan Krell. Dan, quick work.
Yeah, we talk about stories going viral, but this one has gone viral. Yeah. I'm getting messages from people all over the world. New York has a long history of passing some of the toughest laws in the country meant to protect honest tenants from greedy landlords, and for good reason. But some lawmakers say the laws have gone too far. We've heard from homeowner.
We are at the mercy of the squatter, the criminal.
After homeowner.
I don't have access. They changed my side locks and they changed my entire front door.
Who are fighting with squatters who have taken over their homes. In New York, if you call the police on someone who moved in without permission, if they claim to be a tenant, they can't be arrested for trespassing. The homeowner instead has to take them to court.
It's an unfortunate upside-down world.
Jake Blumenkrantz is trying to change that.
They know how to work the law to stay for a certain number of days and kind of work the system.
In New York, squatters have rights after 30 days. That means the property owner can't change the locks on them, can't remove their belongings, can't cut off the utilities, or they could be arrested. Instead, property owners must go through the court system to get rid of them, a system that could take close to 2 years for a resolution.
People could stay in a home for years.
Okay, so on Monday, I think one of the things that we all just could not believe was that homeowner who was actually arrested for changing the locks on her own home because there were squatters inside. Is there an update? What's happened?
Yeah, the one that was involved in the standoff.
Yes.
She was arrested. She was released about an hour later. She has a summons to appear back in court, and she's still in a standoff with the squatters. There's still multiple people living inside her home. Not only that, some of the people, there's at least 4 people living in that home, and I spoke with at least one of those people who say they're renting from the main person in the house. So the allegation here is that the main guy in the house is making money off
so
of
it's
Adele's
becoming a
home.
whole enterprise. It's just highly.
It's a whole thing.
It comes across very egregious. But I remember when you came here the first time, and you were talking about that couple.
The
I think
Landa
it was Douglas
family.
and Queens. So what's the latest on them?
Can you believe it? After buying the home in October, they still haven't been able to move in.
Wow.
Still?
Do you guys
Still
remember
haven't
this
been able to
family?
move in.
It's amazing that there are even squatter advocates, because just the term squatter has a negative and illegal association. So the fact that there are people advocating on their behalf is astounding.
Well, our state and our city has a long history of greedy landlords. So this is all tied into the property rights bills. So once you try to make a change, one change in a property rights bill, a lot of groups get up in arms. And for good reason, because they're concerned that it could chip away at tenants' rights, because everyone wants to make sure that they have a safe place to live and they're not going to have anything bad happen to them.
Did you see the scam that they were trying to do in New York City? Where they were trying to give them debit cards with $10,000, but there's people getting cuts all along the way?
That wasn't a scam. That was business that got uncovered. And I'll prove it to you.
There's a lot of money being made.
Yeah.
A lot of money being tossed around in this system. And if you have a thing like an open immigration policy, for sure, someone's figuring out how to profit off that. Someone's figuring out something about that.
No, you're looking at it the wrong way. There is no one who isn't profiting.
Everyone's profiting.
How ridiculous. Greatest country in the world. And then it not be a big deal to get there.
Of course.
3 days or 4 days. I've been here. Like, as you see, people are sitting here. We spend the night here and the day as well. We wish they can move us to another place, like a safe place. We cannot spend the whole week here, It's not safe, it's dangerous.
Es lo único que le estamos pidiendo al gobierno, que nos dé la facilidad de trabajo
2 días tengo acá en la espera del albergue. No son condiciones normales porque nosotros también necesitamos bañarnos y otras cosas. Por lo menos nos dan un poquito de alimento. Nos dan fruta, nos dan pan, todo eso. Pero ya en la noche ya quedamos como a la intemperie. No nos dijeron que esto iba a ser acá así.
They brought them here and put them in the hood because they want us to fight each other. And by us, I mean us. I just got a phone call from my homegirl and she's talking to me about the immigrants that are now in the hood and how they are now creating gangs. And think about it, they put them in all the hoods around the U.S. and all the democratic states where all the black people and brown people live. Here I was thinking that they were being brought here so they can fight Americans, but really they're being brought here so they can create chaos in the black and brown neighborhoods. I'm originally from right outside of Chicago, and my homegirl's in Chicago now, and she said they are hanging out on every street corner all through our old neighborhood. And once they start committing all these crimes, they're going to get arrested, and then they're going to be used for the slave labor in these big prisons. That's why they're creating cop cities. They all have this planned out completely. I think we're going to see a major outburst in criminal activity, and we're going to begin to fight these people in our own neighborhood because they already had that planned.
This is not an accident. Within Biden's first 100 days in office, he signed an executive order requiring non-citizens, aka illegal immigrants, to be included in the U.S. Census, which directly influences the apportionment of congressional representatives in the House. Some experts warn that illegal immigrants account for 22 seats in the House of Representatives. Republicans only hold a majority in the House by 8 seats, so this 22 seats is very significant. And Biden and the Democrats know that. That's why they're allowing this to happen.
What do you mean the immigrants are getting a check and we're putting them up in places that what? You mean in the homeless people's face?
Right in the homeless people's faces.
Like,
right?
Let us show you what we could have done.
Right.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's not okay as a society.
No.
Some people say that mass immigration into the United States can help reduce world poverty. Is that true? Well, no, it's not. And let me show you why. This gumball represents the 1 million legal immigrants that the United States has taken every year on average since 1990. Now, who in the world deserves our humanitarian compassion? The World Bank has one measure of the desperately poor of the world. They make less than $2 a day. And how many people make less than $2 a day in the world? We'll start with Africa. In Africa alone, there are 650 million people who make less than $2 a day. 650 million. And in India, another 890 million people, desperately poor. China adds another 480 million people, making less than $2 a day. And unfortunately, the rest of Asia has a heartbreaking 810 million people who the World Bank says make less than $2 a day. And finally, there's 105 million of Latin America's population that are desperately poor. All told, the World Bank says there are 3 billion people in the world. 3 billion people who are desperately poor, making less than $2 a day. That's 3,000 gumballs. And every year, we take 1 million and suggest that we've somehow made a humanitarian difference. Of course, we don't pull our immigrants from these desperately poor populations, do we? These people are too poor, too sick, too disconnected to make it here as immigrants. We tend to pull our immigrants out of the better off poor of the world. And Mexico tends to define the type of immigrant that we bring here because the plurality of people come from Mexico. And Mexico is poor. How many people in the world live in countries that have average incomes lower than that of Mexico? And the World Bank tells us that that number is these 3 billion plus another 2.6 billion people. 5.6 billion people in the world who live in countries with average incomes below that of Mexico. That's 5,600 gumballs. And so what is it that the elites are telling us? They're telling us that when we take this 1 million immigrants, that we somehow or another are tackling world poverty. And we have to do it regardless of the effect on our unemployed, the working poor, the most vulnerable members of our society, regardless of the effect on our natural resources. Even if we went by the most radical proposals in Washington, which are to actually double our immigration to 2 million a year, which would totally overwhelm our physical, natural, and social infrastructures, we couldn't make a noticeable difference. And we may be really hurting the impoverished people of the world because the million that we do take are among the most energetic, often the better educated, certainly the most dissatisfied people that if they did not immigrate would be the agents for change to improve the lot of all the people in these countries. The true heroes in the global humanitarian field are the people in these countries who have the wherewithal to immigrate to another country, but instead stay in their countries to apply their skills to help their fellow countrymen. Unfortunately, our immigration system tends to entice these very type of people to abandon their countrymen. The impossibility of making even a dent is actually worse than it looks here. Because last year, when we took 1 million immigrants, these countries added births over deaths, 80 million more people into the impoverished population. And this year, Congress is bringing in 1 million legal immigrants. And this year, according to the United Nations, these countries are expected to add another 80 million people. And next year, you can be quite sure that Congress, unless stopped by the American voters, will bring in another 1 million immigrants. And these countries, unfortunately, will be adding another 80 million people into these impoverished nations. We could take 5 million a year, but we'd never get ahead of what's happening in these countries. Not in this century. Don't you see? Immigration can never be an effective or significant way to deal with the suffering people of the world. They have to be helped where they live. 99.9% of them will never be able to immigrate to a rich country. There's no hope for that. They have to bloom where they're planted. The only place that 99.9% of these people can be helped is where they live. Let's help them there.
What people are shocked at is that there's no effort whatsoever to stop the stem of illegal immigration.
This is the bees saying, why do they love our honey so much? Right?
That's what people are freaked out about. Like, it seems like
we're
it's on
not
purpose.
freaked out about the loss of bees.
I am.
If all the bees are gone, we're gonna die as a civilization because we didn't protect one of the most important insects in the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know.
And they think cell phone signals are fucking them up too.